Breaking news into CBS Sports HQ, where Juan Soto is joining the New York Mets. Per multiple reports, Soto has agreed to a 15-year, $765 million contract, including a $75 million signing bonus. That works out to an average annual value of $51 million per season. The $765 million figure sets an MLB record, surpassing Shohei Ohtani's 10-year, $700 million contract last offseason. Just 26 years old, Soto's coming off an all-star season in 2024 where he hit .288 with 41 home runs and 109 RBIs with the Yankees. He joins a Mets team that won 89 games last year, reaching the NLCS before falling in 6 games to the Los Angeles Dodgers. We're now joined by CBS Sports MLB analyst and former Miami Marlins president David Samson, following the news that, David, we've been following. I feel like it's probably been for the past year or so, because we knew Juan Soto was set to become a free agent. And we know he also had plenty of suitors this offseason. We heard the rumors of it going to be him sticking with the Yankees or going with the Mets. But now that we know his final decision, how much sense does the Mets make for you just in his ultimate decision?
Well, first of all, let's say that it's been going back for way more than a year.
It has.
Remember, the Washington Nationals had offered him $440 million with a bunch of money deferred, and he chose to go year to year waiting for this moment. And then when there was 1 year with the Yankees, taking them all the way to the World Series, hitting with Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, the thought was that the Yankees wanted to keep him, and they were in the race. But so were the Mets and the Dodgers and the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. But Steve Cohen said something when he bought the Mets. He said, I want to win a World Series in the first 3 to 5 years. And then he said, I'm not going to let a generational player pass me by. So let's combine that with Scott Boras, the most powerful agent in baseball and maybe in all of sports, who was so angry and bitter about 2 things. One, that Shohei Ohtani had the record and he's not Shohei Ohtani's agent. 2, that his players last year signed late and they didn't get the deals that he had promised them. So he wanted to set the record straight by setting the record and by letting the world know that he's back. And boy, has he accomplished his goal. Stephen Cohen accomplished his goal. Juan Soto accomplished his goal. And I'm really happy I'm not the president of a National League East team right now.
Absolutely. But you talk about what happened last year and how everything kind of transpired so late, and getting this done early and getting it done to the magnitude that it was done certainly is a nice little brush your shoulder off moment for Scott Boras and company. But David, you're a front office guy. Just where does Soto's contract rank on the list of largest contracts, just when you're considering sports in general?
Well, I believe it's a record, the likes of which we only normally see guys get paid when they go play soccer in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
But this type of contract, you're talking about $51 million a year. Word is that there are no deferrals whatsoever. That means that Juan Soto's getting his money, not 20 years from now. Well, sort of. He's getting it for the next, is it 15 years? 16 years? Think about this. He's 26 years old. And so when you give him 15 years, what you're saying is we're going to get 10 years of really good play. Then we've got a DH for the last 5, and maybe it'll be like Albert Pujols or Miguel Cabrera, where the last couple of years, the juice will not be anywhere near the squeeze. However, Stephen Cohen hopes to have some jewelry on his fingers, so in his mind, he would pay a player $75 million, $100 million per year for 8 good years if he could get some championships. But boy, is there a lot of pressure on the Mets right now to continue to build the team, because you're going to have to add a pitcher and you're going to have to think about re-signing Pete Alonso as well, because as you know, one player in baseball does not a World Series make.
Absolutely, but we did see a little bit of what the Dodgers were able to do, shelling out that money for Shohei Ohtani, reaping a part of that benefit, winning the World Series this year. Stephen Cohen, like you said, looking to do that same thing. But I want to follow up on what you just said, because obviously there's still a lot more dominoes to fall in this free age, or in this offseason in general. But we look at this being maybe one of those big dominoes to fall. looking at this Mets team, what's your expectations? Just, I know it's very early and there's still plenty to happen, but looking at this Mets team, what does Juan Soto do for them? And then also on the other end, how are you looking at this Yankees team as well?
Well, I also want to mention that before anyone compares Ohtani, I want to point out that Ohtani took deferrals that were significant, and by getting paid only $2 million a year, you're basically saying that, hey, sign a bunch of other guys, which is what the Dodgers did. But Soto's not deferring anything. And the general rule is that if you have a player, maybe 20% of your payroll, that's $250 million you have to have on the field. And that's the maximum that you should have any player as part of a payroll is about 20%. So my guess is the Mets are going to have to go even higher than that because in baseball, you just cannot count on one player that much. So let's focus on the Mets, as you asked. If you look at what their team was last year, and they got all the way, I was going to say conference finals, to the National League Championship Series, they had a lot of things go right for them. They had Lindor, who had an MVP-like season, didn't have a great start, and then obviously he came on tremendously. You had a bunch of their pitching overperform, and then you had role players as well. And that's what you need to have success in baseball. What Soto does, he obviously slots in, with Lindor and Soto at the top of the lineup, maybe in the 2-3 hole. They're going to have one of, if not the most formidable lineups. But as we know, you have to complement that. So I would expect the Mets to continue to add because this move to me, it's an all-in move by Steve Cohen for these next 4 or 5 years of prime of Juan Soto, for the end of the prime of Lindor, sort of end of the prime of Pete Alonso if they can bring him back. So this is very much a right now, chips in, no one's going to top us. And the other thing, I'm sorry, I could go on for so much longer. I don't want to take too much of your time. But Steve Cohen made it clear from the beginning, he's not going to get outbid. So what's interesting to me is Boris played this perfectly. He had all the big markets in. Yankees and Mets is like manna from heaven fighting over a player like this. He's 26 years old, the best hitter in baseball, and I mean that. He's the best hitter, overall hitter in baseball. And you've got two people competing, but at the end we knew the Yankees really can't compete with the Mets. No one believes me, but the Yankees cannot compete operationally, given losses, with what the Mets are willing to do. The Mets are willing to lose money. And at the payrolls they will need with Soto on their team, they're going to lose money. I promise you that, no matter how many season tickets are bought, because he doesn't come with the sponsorship that Ohtani comes with. He doesn't come with those other factors. But Stephen Cohen didn't want to be denied. And the other owners knew this when they admitted him into their tight club, that when you've got an owner who is willing to lose money and doesn't want to be denied, you get a situation just like we're seeing tonight.
Yeah, Stephen Cohen, like you said, putting all of the chips on the table, going all in for Juan Soto, and did just that and got his guy. And like you mentioned, at 26 years old, even if you get 10 great years out of him, he's got a guy that is playing, you said, the best hitter in baseball, playing in his prime.
And listen, let's talk about the Yankees for a minute. I understand that Yankee fans are despondent. A shout out to Brianna. I get it. There's despondency everywhere, but we love you, Scott. You're happy. I guess that's a little inside CBS stuff, but I just want to say the Yankees really were smart, and that may sound silly, but if you pivot and you spend the money that the Yankees were willing to spend on Soto, not even all of it, but if you allocate those dollars and you plug 3-4 holes and get deeper, you bring in, it's obviously not going to be Adames, but you bring in a 1, maybe 2 now of the top starting pitchers. Maybe you can get Burns and you can get Fried, and it's still way less than you would have paid Soto. And you look at your position core, did Soto help? He did. But you don't have a bunch of schleppers in New York. These are good hitters on the Yankees. So I think the Yankees did exactly what they needed to do for their fans and for themselves. They went to a level that borderlined absurdity because Aaron Judge can say what he wants. I don't mind being the second highest paid guy. But you bring Soto back at that number compared to what they brought Judge back at, and it's twice that much. Soto is not twice Judge. He's just not. and you don't want to create those type of issues.
That is a brilliant fact that you just brought up, that when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, looking at this Yankees team, what that could mean, just looking at some of these powerhouse players that they do have on their roster. But hey, David, technically, I'm just saying, the offseason's still young. Plenty more to follow. David Samson, as always, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Taking a look at the most home runs before turning 26 years old in MLB history, Juan Soto sitting in the top 6, 201 home runs. The guy still in his prime.